It's been a wild journey, and this TCG has come a very long way. What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Today, we are once again checking out and diving into the fantastic Domain trading card game. I promoted Domain multiple times before, and it's a game that I've had a blast in the past playing. It's been a while, and I thought that now was the perfect time to show off all the amazing changes, additions, and improvements the Domain TCG has made to keep its community engaged, as well as gain some new players, like maybe you watching the video. Let's first have a quick crash course for those of you who may not be familiar with the game at all. Domain is an online trading card game fairly similar to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelists of the Roses, but I guess you could say that it's crossed with chess. It's played on a wide field with varying terrain that changes from game to game. The terrain in Domain can give monsters bonus combat stats like attack value as well as additional hit points. It's something you're always going to want to pay attention to. The board's layout, where you move your monsters, where you summon them, etc., are all affected by the terrain. It's a bunch of small things that of course can add up into something big like victory or defeat, and you'll definitely have the advantage if you can navigate the board better than your opponent. The goal of Domain is to take out your opponent's king. Just like in chess, players are going to go all out to protect their kings and not lose, so you'll have to strategize as to how you're going to take those guys down. Unlike chess, however, the kings are usually incredibly powerful and some of, if not the most powerful monsters in any given player's deck. So sometimes even if you manage to trap them, they might just be able to brute force their way out if the terrain is right. Kings are known to have incredibly potent abilities and their HP is fairly high, so these are not monsters that you're going to be able to one-shot. Domain requires a ton of thought and strategy as the board changes from game to game, so you won't just be able to rely on using the same successful tactic over and over again. This keeps every game feeling fresh and exciting for players and ensures that no two games are really going to play out the same. Domain is a mana-based resource game, so you can't just throw all your monsters down in your first turn, and it allows both players equal opportunity to set up their plan of action, whether that be an aggressive and offensive one, or maybe a sit back, fortify my defenses type strategy. Mana in Domain is how you summon additional monsters, so you're always going to want to keep track of it. Burn through too much early and you might find summoning more powerful monsters difficult in the later turns of the game. All of Domain's strategic elements collide in battle as you continually have to manage the mana pool, your monsters, your king, all while navigating the board at the same time. Since I last showed Domain on the channel, they've made a huge batch of changes and improvements for the better, starting with the overall presentation of the game and interface. The board is more detailed and more beautiful than ever before, the terrains really look gorgeous, and my personal favorite change, the colors just pop. There's also been an added level of detail when it comes to making things more clear for newer players. In the past, this was actually my only problem with Domain, as when I was first learning the game, it was kind of hard to know what cards on the board were mine, which monsters had already moved, or which monster was my opponent's king. But they've added a lot of distinguishing features, like how the kings are denoted with golden borders that make it apparent. Overall, these better and more vibrant colors make it pretty clear what you can and can't do. Honestly, Domain is now pretty user-friendly, especially for new and beginning players. Domain has also upgraded its AI for when you're looking for a serious challenge and maybe you're in to test a secret strategy you're not quite prepared for the world to know about yet. I warn you though, play against those level 2 bots at your own risk. This AI is tough, aggressive, and will absolutely bring you to your knees if you aren't prepared. So, word to the wise, if you're new to Domain, I suggest you start with the training wheels on and go through the tutorial which will give you the hang of things. If you're a seasoned Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, you'll recognize some of Domain's features from Yu-Gi-Oh! Like trigger and continuous monster effects. These work exactly the same way they do in our card game, though some things about Domain are different, like how Domain has an infinite hand size. You might think that an infinite hand size could be a problem, but again, you'll still have a finite mana pool. Additionally, only one monster can be summoned from your hand in any given turn. One thing I really like about Domain is the variety in the king class monsters. It really feels like there's something for every type of player out there. Some kings have tons of raw power and damage, but can't move many spaces, so they can fall victim if they're boxed in. Others can dart all around the board, but lack pushing power if they aren't accompanied by a small platoon. Also, there's no auto-losing just because of a bad matchup with a specific king, because as stated earlier, the board changes from game to game, so there's always that little chance that you can get one with favorable terrain for your king and the other monsters in your deck. Heck, even if you don't draw a favorable board, there's still just the skill element of using, navigating, and adapting to the board better than your opponent, which of course can make all the difference. Domain makes learning easy, not just with its very engaging and quick tutorial, but it also includes built-in guides like the Force tutorial and the tactics page, which is great for new players. It gives you some of the basics of the basics and can really give you some tips to conquer your opponent. The Domain TCG has 5 different rarities and tons of cards, which in turn means tons of decks and strategies to test out. With all these cards could come problems, but there's always balance updates, so even when a certain spell or king is a little too powerful, it'll more than likely see an adjustment to bring things back to a more fair level and just a more even playing field. The Domain developers are always open and listening to their community, and they post regular updates and news right from their official Facebook page, so the players are always in the know. The Domain community is rapidly growing, and you can always find players to talk about the game and strategies on Discord, Reddit, and Facebook. Maybe if you're a little intimidated and don't want to jump right into the action after the tutorial, there is an awesome spectate mode that lets you watch ongoing games. This is one of my favorite tools because you can see new strategies and combinations that you might not even be aware of yet. And let me tell you, there are always people on playing Domain. I was actually recording at 2:30 in the morning and there were tons of games to watch. I was blown away seeing all the new monsters and spells that have been added into the game recently. Okay, so now that I've gone over what Domain is, its features, the new improvements, and walked you through the tutorial, let's hop into some games and show you what it looks like when all the magic comes together. So what you guys are going to see is a little bit of me playing against the computer AI. And I wanted to play against one of these new high-end king monsters that I had not seen. Now, I clicked on that thing and whoa, that opening turn was super aggressive and it caught me off guard. I mean, they basically rushed me down and were within an inch of my king. So I started looking around and I said, I gotta get away from this thing, this bog dweller, until I can really assess what this thing can do and how much damage it can potentially do to my king, etc., etc. But the first thing I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to get away from it. I wanted to get out of its attack range because I had not seen the monster yet. So I decided to get out of there. But that's one thing that I've noticed that the high-end AIs will do. They're very aggressive from the start. They will try to rush you down if you let them. So usually my game plan is to kind of run away. And it was again, he just kind of is coming up to me. There's a little bit of a, oh, you're approaching me moment. And I just decide, you know what? I'm going to meet him head on. So I start attacking his king because he keeps putting down those gardens. And those don't really do damage. All they do is produce mana, which obviously lets you summon more powerful monsters. But, you know, they're not going to defend your king. So I say, hey, if your guy's out there and he's the only thing on, you know, the only monster that you have, I'm gonna start attacking it. And you can see I get it pretty low. I get that thing to about half HP and I'm starting to feel pretty confident. But then my my opponent starts retreating and then he summons a very powerful, well, he starts summoning his own monsters, and that made me feel like I was so close. I feel that if I had a little more mana, because I did have to use a decent amount of my mana to, you know, summon a monster so I could start attacking. I feel like if I would have had a little more mana, maybe I could have closed this out, because, you know, I run over their monster with my Chimera. That's the king for my deck, and I am familiar with that card. That's one of like the old kings. So I'm like, okay, this will be a deck that I'm good with. I decide to go ahead and I think I'm going to set up my own garden, because you can see I only have like 2 mana, and honestly, I just kind of need to get some mana generation going, because my opponent, their bog dweller, he's in full retreat mode. So he sees my little army coming, and he's going to summon his own big monster, which unfortunately did go swing into my king. And I'm like, oh man, now I got to deal with basically like, another copy of his boss monster. So I'm kind of I'm distressing a little bit because I feel like I was so close to taking this guy out. So I am going to start attacking his second copy. But my one issue is I'm not sure that my deck is really loaded with enough powerful monsters to to take his down. I'm essentially playing with like basically a starter deck. Like this is not supposed to be one of the high-end decks of the game. So I'm somewhat I got my hands tied behind my back. I'm just gonna summon another garden, try to get some mana production going, basically doubling up, and hopefully I can just get a powerful monster. But this is kind of showing you guys what domain looks like. You know what I mean? Sometimes if you're too aggressive early, you might start having to retreat if your opponent does something that maybe you don't see coming. Like I don't think that he really anticipated after rushing me down twice for me to start going on the offensive. And now my king is he is wounded, the Chimera. So the Chimera can definitely dart around. It has high mobility. That's one of the reasons why I like it. So I'm basically trying to get it out of there. But he's gonna summon a healer, and that was like the nail in the coffin because he can just sit there. He can get his see, now he's getting HP regeneration. His king's gonna start healing. I don't have that that monster in my deck, so it's kind of a problem. But assuming I had a better suited and more well-constructed deck, I might have actually been able to take him out. But yeah, this is just a demonstration on what domain actually looks like. And when you get very good at the game, it can be incredibly satisfying and very rewarding. So I implore you guys to check out the domain trading card game. Of course, all the links will be in the description below to not only the website, but their social media, their Discord, and all that good jazz. Thank you very much for watching as always.